Being Marty's here, we'll start the sidewalk committee.
I know.
Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? So on our agenda, we're going to go through the 5-year proposed sidewalk plan. Our next, we have a slide that kind of identifies all the areas that were called out for the next 3 years on a map. So we just kind of noted those on a map just so you could kind of see with the different colors where they're at. We'll move on to the next sheet that kind of breaks out all the different costs. So what we did is we identified the areas that were originally proposed in 2018, which is 7th from Edgerton to Iowa, 8th from Minnesota to Edgerton, South Iowa from 5th to 2nd, South Montana from 7th to 2nd, and Edmonds from 13th to 9th. And we broke them out between what would be the assessment cost between each area and the city cost and the approximate square foot. And up at the top of the slide, you could kind of see, we kind of put in there about what the amount that we put in for this year. So approximately we installed 14,000 square feet of sidewalk this year. Last year was about 9,000 because we removed Ash Street from the project, so we didn't do as much as what we've done before. And then the year before we did 29,000. So it kind of shows you just where we were and what we ended up with sidewalk square footage. And then we just kind of, you'll see in some of our proposed ideas that it's kind of based off of more of square footage. As you can see in that original plan proposed. So then we'll go into 19. So you could see in 19, we got South Minnesota from Williams to Nindy. So this whole, that whole area would be the area around Dakota Wesleyan. Norway from Maine to Burr, Norway from Raleigh to Burr, South Minnesota from Norway to Mitchell Boulevard, South Minnesota from Mitchell Boulevard to Williams, Mitchell Boulevard from Kittredge to Williams, from Williams to Nindy, Nindy to McCabe, McCabe to Minnesota, Minnesota to University, Foss Place from Mitchell Boulevard to Havens, University from Havens to Court Merrill, Andrews from McGovern to Duff, and then Andrews from Duff to Raleigh. And
Terry, before you go any further, did we finish all of 18 that you have up here?
The only, okay, so the original of 18, we haven't done any of that stuff.
Okay.
So that was what the original proposed was, but we had to back up a couple years, so that's the reason why we're off a little bit. And then move into original sidewalk plan proposed for 2020, which would be 1st from Marshall to Tiger, Marshall from 1st to 4th, 4th from Marshall to Wallace, 2nd from Foster to Calhoun, and Kittredge from 4th to 5th. Okay, then at the last, I'll move into other potential areas. Now, these are areas that we've had requests for of wanting people that want sidewalks, or we've heard from the public that this area really needs to be addressed, or from previous sidewalk waivers until building construction happened. So the bypass from Bank West to Main Street, so that's in the area of the new car wash, Jack's Car Wash, that got put in. He asked for a waiver, and once Bank West got built, he said he would finish off the sidewalk. So Bank West put in sidewalk on the bypass from Sanborn to their property line, and the rest of the way to Main Street would be the car wash. Main Street from the bypass to Green Drive. So then as we go up to Main Street, we would continue down Main Street on the west side through the mall area, and that would connect sidewalk all the way on Main Street from basically Railroad Avenue all the way to the bypass. Fair Oaks, Langdon to Wildwood. So this was brought up in a previous sidewalk hearing to continue on in that area on Fair Oaks. The same way with North Davison, to continue that way all the way to 23rd Avenue. And a lot of these areas, Fair Oaks and North Davison, are people that built after the code year that should have put it in when they built their house. South Raleigh from the interstate to Norway. So this would be on the west side. There's some apartment buildings on the west side of the street. So we would propose going from Miedema's driveway up to Norway on the west side, where there is already a curb and gutter section. Now, we have talked in the past about we want to connect a bike trail or a trail that would go from the Cabela's Loop all the way up to, say, the Wesleyan Loop and the sidewalk on Norway and Raleigh. I think, and Kyle and I talked about this last week, that a bike trail really would work the best on the east side of Raleigh, but we have no sidewalk there, so we'd have to do curb and gutter, we'd have to do fill area, and to put in a bike trail on that side. But the best place to have a crossing is at a controlled intersection, and we have a controlled intersection by the four-way stop at Raleigh and Norway. So that's where I guess my idea would be to put a future bike trail would be on that side. We have talked to the DOT, and the DOT has no problem of doing some bridge work underneath there. We have to design a plan to go underneath the bridge. We would have to pay for the sidewalk section, and we'll have to build like a L-shaped retaining wall, and then the DOT would rebuild the concrete panels underneath the bridge. The reason why we brought this up is we've had requests from people that live out there, is our kids are walking in the snow to get to the sidewalk on Norway Street to get to school. And in the summer we look for pathways in the grass. Now we look for foot feet in snow. And we've noticed a fair amount of foot tracks going on the west side of Raleigh, so that's the reason why we thought this would be a good area to add in, and it was also by a vocal request. The other area would be Norway from Edgerton to the bypass. This is in that area by the DOT. We have talked to the DOT about adding this in. We see a lot of runners from Wesleyan run along Norway Street all the way up to the bypass. So this would be a project that we added to a potential area, which would finish off really Norway from Raleigh all the way to the bypass. Spruce from Burr to Cabela Drive on the north side, and Spruce from Burr to Cabela Drive on the south side. So if you go to the next page, we met with Stephanie and the mayor, and then Kyle and myself, and we thought we'll come up with some ideas for a proposed 2019 and see what you guys think. And if we want to change it, we just thought we'd give you some ideas. So what we kind of came up with is, starting next year, at around the first part of July, all the Burr Street sidewalks will be installed. So we'll have sidewalks and bike trail on Burr Street. Then once people want to go to Cabela's or Walmart, they'll have to either walk in the street or walk in the grass in order to get to the bike trail over on Cabela Drive or to Walmart, Menards, that area. So we thought this would be a good potential area to work on next year. The next area would be that bypass from Bank West to Main Street, that area by Jack's Car Wash. Main Street from the bypass to Green Drive. 7th from Edgerton to Iowa, which is part of our original proposed plan for next year. 8th from Minnesota to Edgerton Street, which is also part of that same plan for next year. South Raleigh from Miedema's driveway to Norway, and then we would work on our ADA ramp inventory that we're required to do as part of the Fed's request. And then in 2020, we would work on Norway from Main Street to Burr Street on the north side. South Minnesota from Williams to Nindy, South Minnesota from Norway to Mitchell Boulevard, and then also work on ADA ramps. And then in 2021, we would work on Norway from Raleigh to Burr Street on the south side, South Minnesota from Mitchell Boulevard to Williams, and then work on some more ramps that year. Now I wanted to go back to the Norway from Main to Burr Street on the north side. We've kind of talked internally, we have a bike trail now that would run along Burr Street on the west side. Do we want to make the north side into a bike trail also?
Where, can you give, is this the map in your?
No, it's not part of the map.
Okay, so where are you at?
So I'm on, in front of First Dakota, Pizza Ranch, that area. I just want to kind of get a feeling from you guys on if you would want a bike trail to connect from Burr Street to, say, Raleigh Street, or if you just want to put that in as a regular sidewalk. It'd be that stretch right where you're at.
So would that connect, sorry, I'm not on the committee, but does that connect, will there be sidewalks all the way from LP Williams to Burr Street then?
Yes. Right now there is sidewalks from LB Williams all the way to Raleigh Street.
Okay, so this will be the
Yeah.
final.
Yeah.
Looks like
It's not,
Yeah, which is where this starts, is it Main?
yeah.
Main to,
We have, I mean, there is a block of 5-foot sidewalks from Maine to Raleigh, and then another block from Raleigh to Duff. So there'd be 2 blocks that are existing 5-foot wide. But I guess the idea would be, as we move forward, if this is something you want to go after, do we want to make it into a bike path, or do we want to keep it as 5-foot wide sidewalks? Okay.
Keep it the same.
Okay.
And I'm not on the committee either, but I'm thinking that the 2 bike paths you want to join there are going south on Raleigh and underneath the bridge, and then connect the bike path that goes around Cabela's to the bike path that goes around Dakota Wesleyan. And going this way with the bike path, I don't. It'd be great if I had unlimited funds, but I think we have to watch that too.
Okay. We just wanted to bring it up. What we normally do on bike trails that are on assessed route, the property owner would pay for the 5-foot section and the city pays for 3. So we wanted to bring it up to you just so we could kind of get a read from you guys on it.
I'm personally way more interested in South Raleigh going underneath the interstate, but that's just my personal preference.
Okay. So then let's move to that next map, Stephanie, that shows the proposed sidewalk bike trail on Spruce and Cabela Drive. So the area that's kind of shaded in gray, which is on Burr Street, that's the area that will be installed this next summer, be completed around the first part of July. On the north side, the area in purple would be that 5-foot wide, the 8-foot wide bike trail that would be on the north side of Spruce, going around that right turn lane, and then we would go through the island and connect with pedestrian push buttons at a crosswalk at Cabela Drive and Spruce. Where Hardee's is, yeah. On the south side, we would have 5-foot wide sidewalk on the south side, so in front of the mall, where that big mall is, and that would go from basically Burr Street to the entrance going into Walmart, the big entrance at Cabela Drive. We would also, at the point where we go to that island on Cabela Drive, we would extend the sidewalk from that point all the way up to Kelly Inn. So all the way to Kelly Inn. So all the way around the corner on the east side up to Kelly Inn. Yeah, so continue on that east side all the way up to that driveway. That way people coming from Kellyan are not crossing the street to get over, and they could cross on a dedicated path. Any questions on this area?
What's the crossing like going to be at Burr? Because I mean, my thought, the idea for traffic going that way is to link MTI, where they put in their path and we redid the railroad grade and all of that over there. So the traffic going from west to east to get over to MTI and back, what's that crossing at Burr? Is that going to be?
It's going to be long, but there is going to be a center island, which would be an area for people to stop. Halfway in between. It'll be all pedestrian push-button signals. And there'll be crosswalks and ramps at basically the north side, the south side, and the east and the west. So you'll be able to cross over on any side of that intersection. We have talked quite a bit internally about that right turn lane crossing, and what we have been talking about is we would just put regular crosswalk signs up with a crosswalk with ramps in, and then if we see a concern or a need, we could always add the solar flashing pedestrian crossing where they could press the button and then cross. It is I mean, there are times it gets busy on that right turn lane, but if we see a need with it, then we could move steps further. We could also add, we'd have to check the warrants, but we could possibly add a signalized right turn red traffic signal there also if we see a concern. Any questions in this area?
I just want to the gray stuff up there. That's the state doing that.
Yep.
And that's next July. You're
That'll be
saying
completed
approximately.
in July. Yeah. Okay, so with that, if you want to go back to that spreadsheet that shows the proposed 19, 20, and 21, I guess any thoughts on this proposed plan, or do you guys have some sidewalk areas you'd like to look at instead?
Terry, we haven't come close to 25,000 square feet the last 2 to 3 years. So why do you think we're going to be able to accomplish that this year?
Because typically we have people that will hire their own contractor to get some of their work done. So we're just trying to be, I guess, in thinking that some of these people will hire their own contractor to do some of that work, and hopefully we'll get another contractor to come in. You know, we did 17,000, but we still had a little bit of time left over, and we had that contractor move into doing the work in the alley. So I think even still with one contractor, that 25,000 is still possible. And with the hopes that we'll try to get a couple different, when we bid this, we'll probably bid it in 3 or 4 different schedules to give us a chance of 3 or 4 different contractors. So, but we do know from where we've been coming from the past that our prices are coming up. So, you know, I think we've gotten really good pricing from talking to other cities in the past with square foot pricing, that we're just getting up there to where that we're still going to be below normal, but we're getting up there a little closer to what the average is.
Terry, you suggested that we did not get some of the 2018 work done, and are we just not going to worry about it?
Okay, so
I don't see a plan for 19 or 20, then, or is it?
Okay, so all the work that we had planned to do this year is complete other than 2 properties. Those 2 properties are properties that were sold during the summer this year, and we were giving them a little bit extra time. And both of those have told me that they're going to get it completed right away in the spring. They had so the stuff that we had originally planned on doing next year, that's why we're reevaluating our plan and seeing if you want to change from the original plan that you created, you know, basically in 2014, so roughly 4 years ago, or do you want to revise from that? This is your plan, so you have the, I guess, the way to go ahead and change it.
Just because the title doesn't show on this, it only showed on that first one. I just want to reiterate that that first column was the assessed cost, and the second column was the city cost, and this is the square footage, because that title page only showed on the first spreadsheet. So in case you're wondering what those breakouts are, I did just confirm the budget for next year is 110 for the city cost of sidewalk.
And if you want to think about it some, we could come back at a future sidewalk committee meeting and give you guys a chance to kind of look at it.
When will the letters go out for the proposed 2019?
Once we decide on the area, we'll start working on them. There's a fair amount of work to get to them, but I'm hoping, say, in about a month. But what we could do is once you guys decide, we could send out just a prelim letter to those people to say, the sidewalk committee has decided that these areas are planned for 2019, and we could get them out in a week or so. Well, if we do make changes from what our original plan was for last year, we would send all those people letters saying that they are not part of the plan anymore, and they'll be part of a future plan.
Because everybody that's on this list now was at least in the 5-year plan or their new construction, correct?
Right.
Right. So they've gotten their notice previously. It just might be a different time frame.
So all these on the list will get a 5-year plan when they expect, or in 3 years, though, when they expect to have some.
Yeah.
Good.
I think having a 3-year plan is a little bit better manageable
Sure.
than the 5-year, but having future plans I think is a good idea.
This seems to me all makes sense to me, and since that's your proposal, I'd make a motion we accept your changes.
Okay, is there a second? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Any more items for the committee? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Adjourned.
Call meeting order, start with pledge allegiance.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your presence and your abundant mercy that you've shown us, your provision. You've been very generous with us, and we are grateful. We thank you so much for this place that we call home. Father, I ask that you would grant your wisdom and direction to those who serve in areas of leadership and administration. Father, I ask that you bless their families, their friendships, and their ability to hear from you tonight. Lord, may we all follow your instruction to be quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to get angry as we seek your best plans for our community. We thank you for all of this in the name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, blessed Christmas to all of you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas. Roll call, please.
Sabers.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
Gosher. McCardle.
Here.
Barrington.
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Charts. Here. Smith.
Approval of consent agenda items. Items appearing on consent agenda may be removed by a city council member for discussion at the beginning of the formal agenda items. Is there anything you wish to remove?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to remove E, the transfer of MG Oil to Easy Dollar,
Okay.
just due to employment of my wife.
Okay. Pull that out. Anything else? I should point out approval of the 2019 tax cab license applications are for those that we have. We do have a hearing on one tonight, so that one is not included in that application. That will be approved as a separate item.
Was going to ask the question. We've approved some other Lyft drivers that are not on this list, so evidently they've decided not to renew, or
Apparently, or they have not renewed as of yet.
okay.
And their licenses will lapse at what point?
Midnight, December 31st, correct?
So they wouldn't be able to drive until our next meeting, presumably, unless they reapply. I mean,
Presumably, yeah.
between that little space.
Correct.
So this is new for some of them because they've never done it before. Do we mail out an application, or we wait till they come to us?
Cindy mailed out letters to the previous taxi licenses
Okay.
that were current this year
Okay.
in
thanks.
18.
Got a question on item L, the ambulance write-offs. What has it been in the past? Last year, the year before, the year before that? Do we know? Can you get it for us?
Yes, 2017, it was $33,077.
Okay.
2016, $53,948. 2015 was $62,371.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other items?
I was just going to make one quick comment here on the phase 2 and 3 of the Sanborn. I'm assuming we send this out for state bids. I'm just hoping that our contractor from Del Rapids decides to bid again this year, because I've just heard nothing but glowing remarks for that company. So I don't think we probably need to personally invite anybody, but that's just.
Oh, I'm sure they'll be interested in it. We're trying to hit between the big bid openings with the state, right, Mr. McCormick?
Yes.
Anything further? Entertain a motion?
Move approval of the consent agenda,
Last item E, right?
less the items that were taken out. E, is it just E and?
It's just E.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mrs. Chark, second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address these items? Roll call, please.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington. Allen.
Aye.
Charks. Smith. Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item E, set date of 01/07/2019 for a hearing on application to transfer MG Oil Company doing business as Easy Dollar Pub, 1801 North Main Street, Suites 3456, Mitchell, to MG Oil Company doing business as Easy Dollar Pub, Village Bowl, 1500 North Duff Street, Suite F, Mitchell.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? Roll call, please. Well, it was part of the consent agenda that had to be roll call, so.
Barrington. Allen. Charks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Sabers. Rice. Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Motion carries with one abstention, correct? Citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of the city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personnel items, please come forward to the podium, state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be given consideration, but no action will be taken at this time. Does anybody wish to address the council?
I got one quick one. I've been approached 3 or 4 times this weekend after the park and rec minutes were in on the Christmas tree. It is, but it's not on the Christmas tree. It's on the purchase of it, which wasn't a budget item, I don't think, and it wasn't approved by the council. They were asking me is there a dollar amount that we can just write a check for, or
$50,000.
Yeah, $50,000.
People ask me, and I
required
didn't know
to be
what-
bid.
they can go 50,000, then it's
Right.
Yep.
okay. That was the question.
It's a beautiful tree, by the way.
Some people.
I'm getting some comments.
Nathan
that some
did
don't-
negotiate it, so we didn't pay list price for it. Or anything.
Yeah, I agree with Susan. I think it looks nice, but I've been getting some complaints either. Evidently, some people like the real tree.
You cannot move.
No. Yeah, they weren't complaining about the tree. They were just complaining that, asking what the cost, how we could do that.
Unfortunately, it was the going rate. They did get a cheaper price than what was listed, and it was out of the vendors that were quoted, it was the least expensive for the LED commercial grade, and you can add on to it. So if the city decides they want that tree bigger, they can add another bottom piece to it so it can make it taller too. So as far as durability and commercial grade, it was the best one.
People, they watch what's going on.
Right.
Like they said, we got 2 days of people working 10 hours a day out there with 8 or 10 to 12 people. How much labor was in there? That's a good question. Don't know.
We did have Nathan go back and price similarly sized real trees, live trees, if you will, and it was $5,588.
Yeah, the value of the trees that we been tearing down are about $5,500, and there was a lot of labor involved with actually going and taking down that tree and bringing it out here with all the equipment, which we didn't.
There's a lot of
have to
labor
do,
putting this one up, do they?
Yeah,
2 days worth.
yeah.
I'm sure. So in other words, at $18,000, with 3 or 4 years you paid for it, and this tree should last well beyond that. See how it comes out of storage. Anything else from citizens?
I had a question that was asked, and I'll bring it up, and I'm sure it's going to come out, but with the next 2 full weeks being holiday weeks, I've had questions, especially people that have garbage pickup on Tuesdays, what the plan is going to be, since both the next Tuesdays, the 25th and the 1st, are holidays.
Mr. Roth, you want to?
We'll probably run a double pickup.
Can you come up just so it's
I'm sure it's going to come out, and we'll have a press release on that, but I wanted to bring it up, especially since we have 2 weeks in a row for.
Yeah, we'll have a double pickup probably on Wednesday. It's usually we do it.
It's the 24th, we're only working till noon.
Noon, half a day.
Yep, half day.
And the 31st, we're only working till noon.
No, that's
no. 31st is one of the 2 holidays that landfill is closed.
Not at all. Okay.
Yep. And then Wednesday we'll have a double pickup. We'll double staff and run an extra truck and everything.
It'll be on the website too.
It'll be on the website, and we'll all the notices will go out to the paper and everything here. Yep.
And in case someone didn't know, also they could subscribe on the city's website for under the news alerts or city alerts, and they'll get a text message or an email notification whenever those are posted. The Streets and Sanitation Division does a really good job of putting those notices online, and it will also hit the social media at the same time too. Just in case anyone didn't know that feature was available.
Shameless plug.
I know, terrible, right?
Further discussion on the citizens' input? Okay. Committee reports, sidewalk.
Sidewalk Committee met tonight at 6 o'clock. We went through the next 3 years of the original 5-year plan sidewalks. We broke down between what was the assessment cost, what was the city cost, and the amount of each area for the per square feet. Then we came up with a plan a proposed plan from Public Works for the next 3 years. The Sidewalk Committee approved the proposed plan for 2019, which is Spruce Street from Burr to Cabela Drive, the bypass from Bank West to Main, Main from the bypass to Green Drive, 7th from Edgerton to Iowa, 8th from Minnesota to Edgerton, South Raleigh from Miedema's driveway to Norway, and then work on ADA ramps. We will send out a generic letter in the next week to these people affected, and we will also send out a letter to those people that were part of the plan that was sent out notices last year. Sidewalk Committee adjourned at 6:22.
Terry, I was going to add one quick thing. I know we're going to get the Bike Path Committee put together and start meeting again. So make sure you take this information to them so they've got that. So if they do want to come back and make some proposals, then they can.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, entertain a motion. To approve committee report.
Move to approve the committee report.
Motion by Mrs. Chirks.
Second.
Second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 9, action to approve renewal of liquor license for VV Inc. doing business as The Hideout.
Public safety would have no opposition to this.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Smith, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 10, hearing and action on the application to Corn Palace Shrine Club for a special event liquor license located in the Sonic Temple for January 11th, 2019 for the Mitchell Area Chamber Banquet.
Move to approve and shameless plug, please get your tickets.
Second. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Yeah. Okay. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 11, Board of Adjustment. Entertain a motion for the City Council to recess the city's Board of Adjustment.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. Rice. Discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address it? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 12, hearing and action on Boyd Reinmetz, 620 West 5th Avenue. Boyd Reinmetz, owner of 620 West Avenue, legally described as the west 50 feet of Lot 7, 8, and 9, Block 17, Raleigh, 2nd Edition, City of Mitchell, Davidson County, South Dakota, is requesting a side yard on a corner variance of 12 feet versus 20 feet, placement of a detached garage. Property zone R2.
Mayor and Council, if you'd noticed in the Planning Commission minutes that was submitted that they did recommend approval. Initially what this request was he was going to move the garage that was at the Rosewood Court variant that we talked about a meeting or two ago. Well, since the Planning Commission meeting and now, I've been told that may not be necessarily the garage he's going to take. So what Mr. Reimnitz has indicated to me that he'd still like to leave the variance pending in the event that he decides to put a different garage there or to build one. So, but initially that was the thought that he was going to, but that may not come to fruition. So, but other than that, there was no neighborhood objections or anything.
Okay, so if he leaves it and he builds one, it would still have to...
Correct. You're still granting the variance. It's just that initially...
Still have to comply with what this is.
What you grant him, correct.
Okay, one other question, and I thought I saw in the notes that Wade London asked the question about whether this property had any nuisance items on it. Did that ever get answered?
I haven't heard anything to that effect, so... And then the other thing that was a stipulation...
Did that get answered anywhere? Yes,
I haven't heard.
I haven't heard.
Know? I do not know. I hadn't heard anything from Wade about it. So
okay.
The one other thing that they did mention was, for as close as he is, there is already an existing sidewalk there that they wanted to stipulate that, even though that is a city ordinance, but they thought it would be good to memorialize that someplace too.
I will move approval of, what are we on? Does it have of the side yard variance with the conditions put on by the Planning Commission.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Rice. Second by Mr. Savers. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one?
I guess I just would like to know for sure what he's going to do before we do this. That's just me. I mean, it'd be nice to know if it was a detached garage or an attached garage. And
it's detached, yeah.
Detached, and even if he changes his plan?
Right.
Did I misunderstand?
Right, yeah. You're approving the footprint.
The footprint stays the same?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
And if that moves, it's got to come back.
Correct, right. If all of a sudden he decides to put a bigger one in there, he's going to have to redo another variance or so forth. So, or, like I said, attached, then he'd have to meet those codes. Basically, what you're just allowing is that footprint.
30 by 28 with a 12-foot variance.
Right.
Or setback. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 13, hearing and action on West Haven Storage LLC, 1520 West Havens, continued from the 12/19/2016 meeting.
Yeah, some of you may recall that why this was tabled or for perpetual table was the Planning Commission, and as well as you did, requested a drainage plan to be prepared to deal with this. And so you could see that I took copies of like the 3 parts of the drainage plan there. The Planning Commission did hold another hearing on this at their last regular meeting and did recommend approval with 2 conditions. One is that there's an access easement from the building to Ullman Street, and there's also an easement that, because of the pipe, it's going to cut through there, going towards the north. So.
Just clarification, I'm looking at that map.
Yeah.
So, yes. So how far forward, how far south will these be?
They're right where the X is.
Yeah, so they're just going to be back
Right.
behind the
There's
car
going to be
wash?
three of them toward going north and south.
They're going to run north-south. I was on the planning commission when they first came to us, and we were concerned about the drainage in the area.
Right.
And it draining across the lot to the north, which is not his property.
John Paul's right across the road, right?
Well, they're behind it, I believe, is Scott and Jeff Larson.
Yeah, it's Quality Homes.
Okay, or Quality Home, yeah.
And then
Mr. Barrington. And then John Paul's across the street from them.
You could probably, we would make it probably as required that he'd have to have those easements prepared and recorded prior to a building permit. I believe there's already maybe an access easement towards Ullman, but he'd have to make sure of that.
And he had a drainage plan through SPN or who?
Yes, SPN. There's copies of it.
Yeah, and so that drawing's on there. And so I guess the question I have on that drawing, does there have to be a 10-inch PVC storm sewer pipe installed there, or it's already there, or it's on that?
I'll let SPN explain.
It's on that drawing that looks like it connects and then goes to Elm.
Yes, there would have to be a new. There's already one that comes to the middle of the.
You want to slide
lot
down on
to the
that
north.
picture a little bit?
Down.
Yeah.
Oh, up, then up to you. Okay, right there.
The dash line. The dash line is already there. That
Okay.
goes to the north of the
Right
circle.
there. That's already there.
That's
Yep.
existing.
And there's an
There's
existing
an
area
areaway
inlet
drain
that's
right
already
there
there.
Okay. And
So it
then
would
that-
connect to that one.
We'd have to. they'd have
Yep.
to
And I
connect.
believe there's already an easement in place for that, but maybe I'm wrong. But I was thinking there's already an easement
If
for
we
that
approve it, we
connection.
got to make sure that there's an easement there.
Right.
And it's,
We would probably make sure that that is recorded prior to issuing a building permit.
okay.
Initially, he was going to take it overland
Right.
to that, but he can't because that's not his property, which is why we wanted a drainage plan on it.
No opposition from the neighbors?
No, and I did talk to or sent notices to them just to let them know that this was coming back. So
Is property owned by
Mr. Ryan.
Caleb? Oh, it's
No.
owned by
Oh,
Mr. Ryan.
he sold it.
it's West Haven Storage LLC.
Okay.
Caleb's here if you've got questions. So he's involved in this project.
You know, I know that we have the drawings and everything, but when I look at the map, I see this, including the old, I call it the old country kitchen, it's Los Sombreros, whatever you want to call it. So that's gonna stay in place. That's not gonna be removed. So I just, yeah, okay. And they'll just always, you're not planning on moving them forward or south at all, just those 3 buildings right there.
Right. And just to refresh, the reason for the access easement was in the event they would ever be parceled off separate, you wouldn't landlock.
Sure.
So that is all one lot, correct?
Correct. Right now, it's all one legal description. That was just the thought that if there was.
Okay, so if he ever sold the building in front.
Right, that there would be an access off to.
Right.
I think that's part of why you have the access easement in the back.
Correct.
Okay. Because the building looks like it's for sale.
Right, right. And plus, you wouldn't want to have it cut through the parking lot to the south. You'd want to maintain. But right now, it's all described as one parcel.
I'll move approval of the conditional use permit for
Motion
West
by
Haven
Mr.
Storage.
Sharks.
Second.
With the
Second by Mr.
conditions, right?
With the
With the
conditions.
conditions,
With
sorry.
conditions.
No.
Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Reconvene as City Council. Will entertain a motion for the Board of Adjustment to adjourn and the City Council reconvene in regular session.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Hearing and action on potential taxi cab license revocation, Speedy Taxi, tabled from 9/4/2018. I have additional information that was handed to me this evening. It's on Unified Judicial System reports. Again, I want to remind those coming forward, if you want to speak to this, you're welcome to speak to it. Is Mr. Eisner here? Okay. He would have the opportunity to speak, to cross-examine you if he so desired. So, anybody wish to speak to this? Please state your name.
Lori Clausen.
We're going to give you 5 minutes to present. Okay.
I'm the one that brought in a police report. I just think it's very important for the public to know how many times this man has been arrested on violent crimes. He gives grade school children rides to school, and I'm sure these parents have no clue who this guy is. He also deals with the mentally challenged, and I just want everybody to know what a violent past this man has. I was going to highlight his, he's been arrested for simple assault. I lost track of how many times. Aggravated assault, witness tampering. I mean, there's numerous things he's been arrested for, and this is just Sanborn County.
Are these arrests or convictions?
That I don't know.
It appears to be a combination of both.
Yeah.
It's a little mixture.
I mean, if I'm a grandmother. If he was picking up my grandson for school and I had no clue who this cab driver was, that's not okay. I think parents need to know who this guy is. That's basically all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this? Yes. Come forward, state your name, please. Yeah, again, 5 minutes.
My name is Larry Johnson, and about 2 months ago, my wife and I took over management of the Roadway Inn. This individual, Dustin, come in there one afternoon, and he decided he wanted to rent a hotel room. And he puts his chip card in the thing, and he pulls it back out, and he says, I want to go pick out my room. And I'm thinking this dude's like a little bit off. And he continued to persist that he was going to pick out his room. I chose to let my wife take care of it because I wanted to be nice. We were new on the job. Well, we start digging into the past of what this individual has done, and we look up on Google, and his residence for his taxi service is at the hotel. Now, we've been here 2 months. I've never seen this guy. And supposedly on the website, you can come there for coupons and discounts and all this other stuff. So I texted him. First I called him, he didn't answer. Then I texted him. I said, you need to get down here. We need to discuss this matter because you do not run your business out of our hotel. Because my wife and I are actually trying to clean the hotel up. There's been some stuff in the past with that, and we're making it a family environment, and we don't want that. In this, he felt that he wanted to threaten me and tell me that, I don't know, he was going to do what he wanted to do. In reading up on his past, we found out he tried to stab his father. I know the Swenson brothers from Woonsocket, where he's originally from. I gained a lot of knowledge of what this idiot is like.
Try not to call him names.
Okay.
That's
Pardon
your
me.
opinion.
Okay. Well, okay, I will. Anyhow, I told him, I said, we need to figure this out because you're not going to have residents here. And then for the past, every Sunday night, I finally just blocked him on my phone because he'd have his girlfriend call at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, so I blocked it. So then they call the hotel phone. Well, we took your text messages to the police because you threatened him. I did threaten him. And I took the text messages, I talked to police, and they said, look, this guy does not even want to step foot in the police station because he has issues. And so whenever she'd call at 1, I'd say, that's fine, great, go to bed, you know. But this individual is, and it wasn't just, he did this in front of a hotel guest, in front of my wife. My wife is running the hotel tonight, otherwise she would be here to testify to this too. But he did this right in front of another hotel guest, demanding that he pick out his own room. I have family members who have been into meth and stuff like that, and this individual was
That's not a fact, so please
Okay,
be careful. Be careful with what you're saying, okay?
I understand that.
All right, thank you.
I will say this, that under what I perceived, he was very agitated. I will not let him on the property anymore.
Thank you.
And he is a harm to...
Did you file any police reports?
I went and talked to the police, and they said...
But you didn't file any reports?
No, I talked to the police, and they said, we'll deal with this.
Okay.
If there needs to be anything in the future, I definitely will. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
What is a misprison of felony?
Just if you're aware of a felony that happened and you did not report it, there's a law that says you're obligated to report it if you know a felony occurred. And then if you don't, that's what you're charged with.
Okay.
Wasn't there a deal last time when he was here, something about him running somebody off the road? Did that ever go to court, or?
It did. We found out today it was dismissed.
It was dismissed. Thank you. Did you have something
That's actually,
further, Lori?
No, I was just going to say he had ran my driver off the road. That's what that was about.
That was actually the first item listed on the UJS report,
okay.
Reckless driving. You can see listed there disposition, deferred prosecution, so state's not pursuing charges at this time.
Okay. Anybody else wish to address it? Go ahead.
I did, and I want to get this straight in my mind. The taxi license we have is with Mr. Theisner's father, correct?
Correct. As I understand it, it is his father. He is a employee and driver for them. Am I right?
Yes, I think Wayne is the father, Dustin is the son, and Dustin is the sole employee.
Employee, okay.
Have they applied for renewal yet?
I believe they have.
Yes, and that's actually the next agenda item would be the approval of his renewal license.
And he was well aware of the fact that we were having this discussion tonight.
Well, he was at the November or the September 4th meeting.
Right.
Been on the radio all day.
We were going to have it on
paper
today.
I just wanted to make for sure he didn't contact us.
I have not heard anything from him, Lyndon, or.
You recall what day he brought in his application?
We've been dealing with him the last day or two, but I don't know if he knew. I don't know if he remembered this was tonight or not.
I think one of the things that concerns me is that so many of these are arrests or charges that have to do with driving or driving under the influence or I don't know, resisting arrest or speeding or I don't know. It just seems like there are a lot of things that would make me feel not inclined to give permission for him to be a taxi driver.
When I see him, he's usually flying by. I mean, I sometimes not go the speed limit either, but he goes by me a lot faster than I'm driving. You too?
And I'm looking at the application, and so they list as manager Dustin Meissner and owners Wayne and Dustin.
Oh, joint owners.
And they do list the address as Mitchell, South Dakota, but does not list. Well, you can see it there.
But then
no
they say,
address.
but then the owners are in Woonsocket and Mitchell.
Does he have a residence here besides the roadway inn? Do we know? Does anyone know?
Can I make one comment? That if you look it up on Google on Speedy Taxi, it lists the residents of the business at the hotel.
And he's not there except one day out of the month, or what?
No, no.
Address on the applicant, or don't we know that?
It's right there.
It says Mitchell.
Got two hands.
Well, I will make a motion to, I don't know, what are we, to deny? Is that what I'm doing at this point? To deny him, isn't that that's really the next one?
Next item, yeah.
Yeah, so what are we doing in this one? It says.
Well, this one we're looking at revocation,
just
but
the
realistically, you're within
Hearing.
2 weeks of termination of the license anyway.
Correct. So
We
that,
can
So-
table it for 2.
or you can just, if you'd like, you don't have to take any action on it at all. You can let it expire at the end of the year and address it with the new application.
Justin, do you have any concerns on either way that we go here? Or from a legal standpoint?
I think there's potentially less problems if you don't act to revoke the license. I think there's certainly grounds for it if that's the way that the council wanted to go, but for the purpose of simplicity, if you don't want to take that action, you don't have to. Just let the license expire naturally and deal with it on the new renewal request.
Which will be the next item, so you can either let it die for lack of a motion, or
Justin, they would have the option to terminate tonight, though, right?
I'm sorry, what was that?
They would have the option to just terminate it tonight, correct?
That correct.
Yeah.
If you want to revoke
if
it,
they want to
tonight,
revoke
you can do that if you choose.
So my concern, I don't know where the council's thoughts are at, but, and I understand what Justin's saying a little bit, but the thought of revoking the license compared to just not renewing it on the next one, are we saying that for the next couple of weeks he's okay to drive, which was what we're saying. But if we're going to not renew it, we're saying that we are going to get rid of it anyway. What I'm questioning is that if we think he shouldn't be driving, then why should we let him drive tomorrow? Is what I mean, especially for the holiday season coming up. A lot of families will be in town probably using our taxi cab services throughout the city, and if we as a council feel that he should not be out in the streets, I don't know why we should wait till January 1st, I guess is what I'm thinking. So, and I'm willing to take, if I know what Justin's concerns are saying, and I appreciate his input to the council, but I also think about the people's lives that are involved. I'm willing to take that risk. So.
I agree with that sentiment, Marty. The one thing that I want to make sure is if you're taking into consideration the criminal history that's been presented to you, there's only certain items in that criminal history that this council should really be considering, and that's limited to the items where he's been found guilty. And I guess if this was
I appreciate that's why you're sitting there. So
if this, for example, if this was a sentencing issue or a multiple offense where you take into account prior offenses, typically the court will only look back 10 years at criminal history, and there's a fair amount of that report that dates back further than 10 years. So just another thing to keep in mind.
Mrs. Charks, well, it looks like a whole lot. So a lot of these were not convictions.
Yes.
So,
and if
just
the
make
council,
sure you're not considering it as a whole in order to the conviction.
And point well taken. Still, there are some enough to raise a red flag, in my opinion.
if the council wants me to go through on the record here, I can just point out to you which ones that are.
Please.
So you can see on page 1 there was a speeding on roadway. There was a judgment of plea of guilty on that. And I'll try to find the dates here too. It's like that disposition was 8/23/2017. There was also aggravated assault judgment on plea of guilty. That was July 25th, 2017. Petty theft.
So just let me ask you a question as we're going through this. So kidnapping in the second degree. So he wasn't found guilty of that, but do we consider the fact that he did there's something happened. Can you talk to me about that?
I don't think it's something that this council should consider. I don't know the facts of the case, and it's not something that he was convicted of. Moving back along onto page 5, there was a petty theft disposition 12/11/2014. Disorderly conduct February 2nd, 2012. I'm not sure what this one was. If it was a violation of a municipal ordinance, perhaps making unreasonable noise, that was January 13th, 2011. Disorderly conduct, November 18th, 2010. Entering remaining on property, April 1st, 2010, and also a simple assault, same date. Disorderly conduct, October 13th, 2009, and then everything past that is over 10 years old. I was not keeping count.
I'd be concerned too about the way he drives. I mean, he drives fast around town. I mean, really fast. Faster than me.
Here's the concern I have, and it goes back, and I brought this up a couple times ago when we were talking about taxi licenses and whether the city government should even be involved in licensing taxis. To me, it really bothers me that a person like this potentially is driving on the roads. But I know of other people that drive that fast that also might have past convictions and work at other places in town, and we don't regulate whether another business in town hires that person and puts them out on the street to do deliveries or pickups or any of those types of things. And that's just up to that employer's discretion of who they hire and what they allow them to do. I'm certainly not going to advocate that the city council try and control everyone with a speeding ticket or type of violation that is put in here, and say that anybody that has been accused of that and not necessarily convicted should be regulated by the city government as to whether or not they can be employed. I don't think that's our job. On the flip side of this, with the new request for application listing Dustin as a manager and a / owner, I can totally justify in my mind that I wouldn't give that person the opportunity for a new license because he's listed as an owner. And it's up to them to employ the right type of people. And my thinking is that, especially in this day of social media and that type of stuff, that public input and sentiment will or should take care of whether or not they stay in business. Now, I understand there's accusations of bullying and those types of things associated with it, but I don't have a legal standpoint to stand on that. So I guess that's my feeling of concern. I don't want to have the city government in the business regulation industry of who can be employed and not employed. I think that's a very dangerous line to cross.
So, Steve, I've given a lot of thought to why it is that we do. I mean, I agree with you. It's unfortunate that this is our responsibility, but nevertheless, it's been given to us. And so,
no, our responsibility is whether or not we grant the license to somebody for the taxi, not who the drivers are.
I agree. Well,
not who the drivers are. We do not approve a list. We used to approve of a list of who the drivers were. And we got out of that for the specific reason of not controlling that.
In this situation, we are talking about the taxi cab license revocation.
Yep. And
specifically, the manager, Dusty Feisner.
No, that's the new application.
That's the new app.
Well,
the old application was strictly
Wayne
Feisner as the owner, I believe.
Okay, I'll finish what I was going to say then. Here's the thing. I wish we didn't have this. I wish this wasn't our responsibility either, but it is. And the reason that I think that it's been given to us is because it's a matter of public safety. So in my opinion, it's our responsibility to look at this and say, is Speedy Taxi running an operation that is in the best interest of public safety in our town? And in my opinion, the answer to that question is no. That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
So to keep things moving along, unless somebody does something else. So 15, which is the revocation, is the recommendation from our council is just to make that die and just go away and move the next.
Well, right now, in this, under this license, you don't have Dusty as an owner.
Correct.
I don't think he's even shown as a manager, is he? He's just simply an employee.
Right.
As previously.
Right. On the current license. So, what Mr. Rice says is very correct. Do you want to get into the business of telling people who they can and cannot hire?
Right.
I don't think you really want to do that, because then you're going to need to start looking at every taxi cab driver, and you got out of the business of that several years ago.
So if somebody wants to do something with 15, I don't know if the council does. If not, what do we do to move on? 16.
Well, we'll entertain a motion. If it dies for lack of a motion, it dies for lack of a motion. So we'll entertain a motion on item number 15. Hearing no motion, it dies for lack of a motion. Item 16. Action to approve the 2019 taxi cab license application for Speedy Taxi. Discussion.
Move to deny.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to deny by Mr. Rice and a second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion to deny signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 17, action to award bid for used scraper city project number 2018-43. Who's going to speak to this? Mr. Roche?
Mr. Mayor and Council, the bids were opened on December 11th at 1 p.m. in the city chambers. One bid was received from Vanderbilt Dragline, and staff recommends to award bid to Vanderbilt Dragline in the amount of $61,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 18, action on resolution R 2018-65, a platted tract of Odlin's first edition in the east 860 feet, of the south 646 feet, of the southeast quarter, of section 18, township 103 north, range 60 west of the 5th prime meridian, Davidson County, South Dakota.
Mayor and Council, this plat is located within the 3-mile platting jurisdiction of the city. However, it is past the 1-mile jurisdiction, which would be subject to our zoning ordinances, and so it's subject to the county zoning ordinances. You may recall you saw this plat about a month or so ago. Well, what happened is, from what I understand from the county told me, is once they started either building or moving things around, they came to discover that what they were proposing would have required a county variance. Well, and so in lieu of doing that, they just changed the plat so the footage is off just a little bit from the previous one. The county commissioners and the county planning commission and the city planning commission have approved this plat. So basically, long story short, is replat it to fix make it comply with county ordinances. So they're vacating the old plat, and this would be the new one.
So it used to be the small lot, now it's the big lot.
Correct. Yeah, yep. And so the footage that they originally were going to put, then that's how they discovered it. So.
Okay.
Move to approve 2018-65.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mrs. Charks. Further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to address this one? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Item 19, action to approve agreement A 2018-30, Sanborn Street Engineering Agreement Phase 2 and 3, City Project number 2019-22. Mr. Croce.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this is the agreement for SPN's post-design and construction engineering inspection services for the Sanborn roadway improvement projects Phase 2 and 3. CEI work will be done during the construction phase in 2019, and the post-design and CEI work will be done in 2024 Phase 3.
I've just got one question maybe for Kyle or Jeff. And I'm looking at the days of work outline. I'm on page 230 of our deal, but I'm not sure what page it is of the bottom of it. Says page two of some section. I'm not sure.
Yep, Exhibit C.
Yeah, and it outlines 194-day and 23-day. And I'm assuming those are your current estimates based on what you're going to bid, and if they change, those days will change, or those will stay the same, or how will that?
Right.
The bid comes in substantially different. Are we looking at that might change?
Well, it won't affect it in the bid, but the contractor's schedule
Yep.
may affect it. I mean, we try to base it on what we think an average contractor would do that amount of work in those days, and it is subject to change. Once we get the contractor's bid, and depending on the schedules go, some of it could overlap with other work and so on and so forth. But if we get it close to approaching those amounts or those days and those sections of it, obviously I'll bring it to Kyle and we'll discuss any changes that might be.
That was my question. Thank you.
Yep.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Allen, second by Mr. McCardle. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Number 20, action to approve agreement A 2018-31 purchase agreement for 701 North Main, also known as Casey.
I guess it's fairly covered in my staff report. So if the council has questions, I'll just open it up for that.
Well, I've already seen people parking there, so so that's no secret.
It does carry a 15-year.
Yeah, the 15-year, it seems long, but maybe something else will change before 15 years is up. So
We use it for Corn Palace.
we'll see what happens.
We put rides on it.
Yeah, but just for a week a year and parking lot the rest of the time. But
I just know the years I've been sitting here in council, we passed up one year, we always bring it up, we didn't buy something across the road.
And
anytime we get the opportunity to control what's around the Corn Palace and our icon, I think we got to keep on moving that direction, especially at this with no expense besides obviously to figure out what we're going to do if it's a parking lot or maintenance or something like that. I think it's something we need to make sure we get on our end of control.
I motion to approve the agreement.
Motion by Mr. McCardle.
Second.
Mr. Barrington, is that you? Okay, second by Mr. Barrington. Well, I wasn't sure it was either him or Mr. Allen.
Oh, it was Marty.
Further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to address this item? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 21, action to approve agreement A 2018-32 amendment to extend existing wildland fire contract. Mr. Overwood, would you like to speak to this?
This is a current contract that we have and several other entities have. This is a multi-year contract extension. All the terms are basically the same. But what they want to do is extend it throughout the next several years.
I guess the question I have, Lyndon, is this just extends it to May 15th, 2019?
I believe so.
What happens after that?
Then
That's only next spring.
Let's see.
I mean, 5 months. So we're going to get something, there's going to be something new negotiated between now and May 15th, and that's why we're only extending it 5 months, or? Because it ends December 31st, 2018, and we're only extending it to May 15th, 2019.
Right. I thought there was a multi-year extension attached to it, but you're right. It does only go till next. They would have to come in and renegotiate again.
And they're okay. So we're giving them time to do that.
Obviously, I was thinking there was something here on a continuous multi-year, but
I didn't see.
I don't see it
anything
now.
beyond that date.
And this comes into play when we send firefighters
Right,
out,
send them out to
west
help.
to help with forest
Yep.
fires.
Yep.
Which we haven't done in a few years, but.
So, I mean, I'll move to approve the extension to May of 2019, but I guess I just question. We'll see it again, I'm hoping, because we want the agreement to stay in place, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Second that.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Allen. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 22, action to approve agreement A 2018-33, 2019 to 2020 Clubhouse Manager Agreement. Mr. Thurman.
Yes, sir.
At the last Golf and Cemetery Board meeting on December 10th, the contract was reviewed, as was Mr. Heath's performance. This new contract is approximately a 3% increase. There was no increase in 2018. At this time, we have no problems with the service or with the contract itself. Any questions?
And legal did review the
Yes.
the current contract?
Okay. Yes. The only changes to the contract this time were the dates and the amount. Excuse me.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Savers, second by Mr. Barrington. Further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to address this item? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 23, action to approve Sanborn Bridge Grant City Project number 2018-22B, utilities certificate and right-of-way certificates.
Mr. Mayor and Council, these certificates are required under the Bridge Improvement Grant with the city and state. And the city understands there are no utilities affected and no right-of-way temporary easements required for that project. So staff recommends the City Council approve and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll move approval of the right-of-way certificates for the project. And the question of, so do we know when the state's going to start?
We're actually bidding in combination with Phase 2.
Okay.
So they'll work in combination with Phase 2. It'll be our contractor. The state is just providing the grant funds, 80% grant funds.
Okay. So in combination with the, well, so
with Phase 2.
There'll be a bid for the bridge and a bid for Phase 2, 3?
2 and 3, yes.
As
Yes.
separate bids?
It will be, it'll be one bid. It'll go out all at the same time for Phase 2, Phase 3, and the bridge. Phase 2 and the bridge will be awarded in 2019, and Phase 3 will be.
Phase 3 could be like an alternate.
Okay.
If it comes in with good numbers, we can have it all at once. If not, we could award the bridge in Phase 2. Correct, Mr. McCormick?
Right.
Oh,
And
Jeff.
I'll add one other thing to that. We'll accept the bid for the overall low bidder for all of them together. You know, whether or not we do include Phase 3 with it or not will be determined by where the prices come in. But we'll award Phase 2 and the bridge, and it will be awarded as 2 separate contracts.
Okay. Okay.
So that we can keep the bridge grant and
that
work.
That money and project separate from
right from the project that SPN is involved with. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Rice got a little excited there. We need a second to that motion.
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. McCardle. Anybody in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 24, second reading of ordinance O 2018-16, adoption of District A boundaries for snow removal.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Charks.
Oh, on second reading?
That's second.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen.
Thanks for waiting.
One question. Did we notify the people along Raleigh or whatever street?
Courthouse there?
No, by the backside of the chamber over there.
Yes, there were six property owners, 4 on the west side, and then
one
the doctor's clinic and Mr. Thompson
Bill.
on the
Yep.
east side. They were all notified by
Okay.
a letter and given a copy of the map and everything like that. So.
Okay. Further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to address this? Okay. Motion not to approve second reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Motion to adopt ordinance O 2018-16. Request public comment.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Charks and Mr. Allen. Comment from the public. Further discussion from the council. Roll call.
Charks.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Savers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Dosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Second reading of ordinance O 2018-17 supplemental appropriations.
We did review this at the last city council meeting. I don't know if anybody has any additional questions from the last time. Again, this is just to ensure that the full amount needed to pay off the final completion of the pool is included in the budget authority. It does not exceed the budget approved by the referral motion or the referral election.
Move to place the second reading.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion to place on second reading signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Motion to adopt ordinance 2018-17. Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Barrington. Public comment? Discussion by the council? Roll call, please.
Sabers.
Aye.
Rice.
Aye.
Gosher. McCardle.
Aye.
Barrington.
Aye.
Allen.
Aye.
Chark.
Aye.
Smith.
Motion carries. Item 28, first reading of ordinance O 2018-18, adopting a new chapter regulating small cell facilities.
All right, well, just what everybody was waiting for, right? Well, I'll kind of start off by walking through the staff report a little bit and just going over that overview one more time. As I said in there, the South Dakota Municipal League has been working to try to put together a model ordinance to cover these subjects because we knew it was going to be something that the industry was coming forward with here in the near future. Throughout that timeline, actually back in October, the FCC released a new order relating to small cell facilities, and that narrowed what cities can regulate quite a bit. That order goes into effect January 2019, not 2018 like the staff report says. So the idea behind the model ordinance is to try to come up with a compromise between letting the providers roll out this technology, but keeping in mind that the city is kind of responsible for maintaining that right away and making sure that it's safe and not overcrowded and can be used for its intended purposes. So why don't we start by going through those pictures if we got them ready, just to give you an idea of what a small cell facility might be. We've got a few examples here that we'll kind of go through on the slides. So this one you can see a lot of what we'll be talking about is kind of pole attachment types where they stick them towards the top of a utility pole or street light pole or something along those lines. This one you can see is just kind of mounted on the side. The antenna is the part at the very top. And then there's some additional equipment mounted on the pole. This one you can also see a similar design kind of up the spine of the pole, equipment wires and then antenna at the top. This again, the antenna is mounted up, I think concealed in the light, and then there's more equipment there. Yeah, that's true. This one's kind of interesting. You can see that there's the equipment at the top of the pole, but then at the base, you can see that there's a little box sitting there. Looks like a mailbox, but that's actually some concealed equipment for the small cell facility. So that's one of the ways that they can kind of stealth this technology so it's not as noticeable and looks a little bit nicer.
Is it every block, or Justin, or what is it?
It's right around there. I think 1,000 feet is about what they're projecting. So every block or couple of blocks, you'd probably need some. Very, very dense requirements to have these placed to get an adequate amount of coverage. So this is an example of an inline placement. They just string it up with the other wires on the poles, I think we've got a few of those examples here. Keep going. Just another example of mounting on a pole. A different design for that is just kind of a cantilever. They strap it on there. This is a canister type design, so the antenna and everything's all concealed on the top portion. Go ahead. And there's a few more examples of it. This would actually be 2 antennas up there that you can see. Then there's a few more examples of the canister type designs too. They just stick them on the top of the utility poles like that.
Why would you need 2 on one pole?
It could be different providers, or it could be targeting different areas.
There, you might see an example where they might have 6 or 7 or 6 or 8 on a pole.
This is kind of an example of what you don't want to see down at the bottom is a box placed where it tends to obstruct the sidewalk.
What cities have these now? Or not in South Dakota?
Not a whole lot in South Dakota. I believe Sioux Falls is starting to get them. Brookings has a couple. There might be 1 or 2 other towns. I think Madison just adopted an ordinance. I don't know if they're expecting any, but.
Well, probably they've got Dakota State University, and they're a small cell. They were doing that test for the government. They're creating a model town.
So again, just similar designs. That one you can see is kind of a larger placement at the top. And then this one they actually put up kind of a statue and they mount the facilities right on the side of it. So just another example of stealthing. Yep.
Camouflage.
I assume, based on the pictures that you're showing us, that they can't be buried?
The antennas, no. Some of the other supplementary equipment, it's possible, more burdensome to do that, but the antennas themselves, they need to be up where they can send and receive signals. So that's kind of what we're talking about as we go through this. And as Dan hinted to, you need a lot of these to make the network work. So if we want to start walking through, is that okay? So we can kind of start going through these sections a little bit here. Again, I think the purpose and the definitions are pretty self-explanatory, so we won't spend time on that. The definitions, in most cases, are directly in line with what the FCC order provides. Once we get down to the applicability section, the kind of goal of that section is to make this ordinance that you'd be passing kind of act as the end-all be-all as to what is going to apply to small cell facilities. So you don't have to look around the code for other provisions that might apply and worry about zoning and that kind of stuff. This is kind of the one-stop shop for it. And if anybody's got questions as we're going along here, feel free to chime in. The siting and co-location section, should be the next one. That's, we want to hide the, you click the line on the left there. We'll make this a little easier to look at. So the siting and co-location section is kind of designed to encourage co-location as much as possible, and that means utilizing existing poles or replacing those as necessary, and then also to try to keep those on public property as much as possible. But because that's not going to work in every single situation, it also gives some flexibility. If that's not going to work for the provider, they can state their reasons why that's not going to work, and they can request a special review of that application.
So I have a question.
Yep.
And I mean no disrespect, you're an attorney. So I'm not saying that you're not like the community's authority on small cell But who's requesting this? Who wants this? Is someone like saying we're ready to implement this and?
Not specifically here. We haven't had any requests to deploy this kind of technology, but right now we're kind of under the gun due to that FCC order. If we don't implement something, then we're kind of stuck with nothing. And we can't require them to really do anything. We've just got to accept what it is they decide to bring us at that later date.
Okay. And who will be the people who will be using, that will be the forces behind it?
Yeah, most likely it'd be Verizon, AT&T, the larger networks. And a lot of those smaller cell providers that you hear of, like Straight Talk or something like that, they actually use the network of the larger companies anyway. So I think when the larger communities are talking about this, they're talking about the big four, which is Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile. So we also implement a permit system, which I guess kind of operates just like every other permit system you'd imagine. We start with an administrative review. Applications are reviewed for completeness. As long as they're complete, you move forward with it. If they meet all the design and location requirements, that permit can just get issued administratively. If they don't meet those requirements, then they'd need to go through that special review process. And the process for the special reviews is that just goes through the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's a few additional findings that they'd have to make, a little bit higher burden that provider would have to establish. And as long as the provider makes those additional, provides that additional information, then the Planning Commission approves the application and it gets approved. So one of the issues with this is the FCC order provides that you've got to act on these applications within a certain time period, which means you don't have a lot of flexibility in taking your time to review the application. It's kind of a quick process. You've got 60 days for replacements and attachments, and then 90 days for new utility poles and things like that. But by the end of that period, you've got to have a decision made of whether it's approved or denied, or you're opening yourself up to a court action. And that's not the place that we want to be, and that's not the place where the providers want to have to go. So the ordinance is strongly worded to encourage, to the maximum extent possible, having action taken within those time periods. And I don't know how much time we want to spend going through the different design and application requirements and that kind of stuff. Probably a little bit more detailed than we want to dig through at this council meeting. But there are there are some variants on what they'd have to provide in an application depending on what kind of a site they're proposing. And then there are also some variants depending on what kind of a location they're proposing, for what design requirements there would be too, on top of a different possible application requirement. There are some attempts in here to govern the aesthetics of these things, and that's more to encourage that kind of stealthing design that you saw in some of those examples, things like the canisters, and I don't know that they're going to be putting up many statues or anything like that here in town, but the idea is just to encourage that so that they're a little bit less noticeable. There's provisions in there to try to make sure that they're not distracting to people who are using the roadways and that kind of stuff.
So we adopt this ordinance tonight, do we need to have those kinds of stipulations established as part of it or not? Is that something that we wait for?
Those are all included here in the ordinance.
Yeah, that's what this is doing.
Yeah, there's different standards that would apply depending on what type of a placement they're asking for. So after that, let's see, where are we there? Once we get into the permit conditions, that's more standard language. You know, tries to make them responsible for what they're putting up there. They've got to maintain it. They've got to take care of the property that they put it on and restore it back to its condition. They've got to have insurance. They've got to post a bond. So that's all fairly standard information. Really, the last major thing that we would probably need to hit on is down in the fees section. And that's way under section 11. Right there. Yeah, there you go. So there we've got two different types of fees that the FCC order addresses. First is the application fees. For that, you're able to charge up to $500 for the first 5 SCFs, and then $100 for each additional SCF on the application. And that's a limit that was placed in place, or put in place by the FCC. The second topic area is recurring fees, and that includes a number of different things. That has to cover the costs of any inspection or maintenance program the city might have in relation to these, and it also has to include any pole attachment fees or anything like that. And on those, you're capped. And I guess I can kind of explain that cap a little bit. The FCC order says that your fees are supposed to be limited to what is a reasonable approximation of actual costs. And they said that fees up to $270 are presumed to be reasonable. And the ordinance itself does not set what that amount will be. What it does say is that the council needs to set those rates by resolution. So if you pass this ordinance, we're going to have to come back in January and set those rates.
Justin, are we proposing that all these antennas go on a public pole, or is there could be an instance where the location is this is the only area where it's going to work and it's on a private, and so then do they receive the fee, or how does that actually work?
So the limit there is just as to what the city might charge. If there's a different organization that might be entitled to compensation for the attachment, that would be something that's separate and apart from this. If it's on private property.
So Northwestern Public Service power poles, they would have to work out a price with Northwestern Public Service, and the city can charge these fees.
Right. This is the city's share here. And I guess I should say that the ordinance doesn't restrict these antennas from being placed on private property. It can go public right away or private property. It addresses both. So I think for the time being, why don't we open it up for questions, and then I do have, let me kind of just explain here. I said we've been working through this with the Municipal League. Last week we had a conference call with representatives from the industry, including Verizon and AT&T, and we had some additional comments come in after this was posted to the agenda. So there are a few more changes that we'll go over here tonight that I'll ask the council to include when they put this on second reading. But why don't we take questions first, and then I'll circle back and we can address those changes.
We got a couple, and Dustin and I talked earlier today, but I just want to point out a couple of the items that we talked about. Is one, a site fee. A site would be thought of as one pole or pole and ground location type thing. So I gave him the example of if I'm a representative of one of the wireless companies and I come in and I say I want to put up 14 antennas or 14 locations, 7 of them will be a new pole that I'm going to put up, and 7 of them are on private or other property, and one antenna or one pole might have 7 of the poles might have 4 antennas and 2 ground stations, and the other 7 are going to have 3 antennas with no ground stations. How many permit sites do I apply for? And the answer, $500 for the first 5 and $100 up to the 14th. And so that would be 14 that you'd have to apply for. And then the part about, so what type of engineering information do I have to give you? Can I give you one set of information for all 7 poles that I'm going to put up, or do I have to give you site and specific information for all 7 locations that I'm going to put those poles? And Justin's answer to me on that was I've got to give 7 separate, because they're all going to be in separate areas on a separate corner or a separate someplace, and their physical location is different. So then I asked, we talked about the fees, and the fees would have to be set. But then my question, there's a section on noise. And does there have to be a noise study only if it's within, I think he has within 20 feet of a residence or what else? The question that comes up on that in Mitchell, my understanding of where they'd probably first try and locate would be in the business district and also out along Norway. Because they're going to want to charge, the businesses are who wireless company makes from a business standpoint. If they're going to try and monetize the 5G area, that's the place they're going to go. So if I'm going down Main Street and I contract with 5 people that own buildings and I want to put them on their buildings, and their building has a apartment in it, now I'm within 20 feet of a residence, and do I have to do a noise study, and do I have to do a noise study for each individual place where that occurs, or can I do one noise study as long as all the antennas are the same? My understanding from talking with Justin is there'd have to be noise studies for each one. That also brought up the question to me, does the Historical Society get involved if any of these need to be placed in our Main Street district? Because that could potentially change and then goes to the aesthetics of what does the antenna look like that I put on a building at 5th and Main? If that would become an issue, and does it have to go through, here's the outline and drawing and all the engineering, and here's what it's going to look like, and I got to send it to Pier to have them look at it. Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, your understanding is it would not have to go to the Historical Society?
Yeah, this ordinance isn't designed to incorporate that, and quite frankly, I don't think that we could within the timeline that we have to make a decision.
Okay. That kind of, I guess, constituted most of my questions related to that. The other, the department is Public Works Department, by definition, and so they would handle all the applications, the review, etc., of anybody that wanted to put them in place. The other question that kind of came up is by giving them this permit, there's a statement that says that giving them this permit satisfies all other permits that might be required in order to install this pole and this new antenna, or even just put an antenna up on private property or whatever else. but there's a section in that if it goes on an existing sign, you don't need a new sign permit, but you can't put it on there and violate what the current sign permit regulates. So if a sign is 8 by 12 or whatever, and by trying to put an antenna on it, you have to make that sign bigger, that is going to have to be looked at as part of a special assessment as to whether that would be allowed. So there are things in there. I wanted to look at it as, I want to make sure we don't end up with something we want, but on the other hand, the FCC has said these are some of the rules. If you don't put anything in place, they're just going to go contract with private people or on public land and be able to put them up. So whether or not we have anybody request and in the short time frame, whatever, I think it is good that we get something in place and get it on the books before January 1st, 2019.
One question I have, just, you showed some examples of different antennas and different things, and you showed the one of an antenna and then it looked like a mailbox, as you said it. Can we dictate to these deals that we don't want this kind, we don't want that kind, or can they, as long as they apply for a permit, they can do what they want and put whatever type of antenna and the rest of it?
Yeah, you can't really require them to conform to a certain, set design. Like you can't say that all your equipment has to be concealed to look like a mailbox or something like that. But you can establish certain more general standards, which the ordinance does, that encourages, kind of masking the technology, making it less noticeable, and making it less obstructive to the right-of-way.
But you're giving final decision-making on the aesthetics to Public Works Director as the person who's approving the permit, correct?
Yes, under the administrative review prong of it, that would be under the Public Works Department's discretion. On the special review side of it, that'd be through the Planning Commission.
I was going to say, I would imagine this would go through the Planning Commission like current cell towers do. The big towers come through.
If they meet all the design and location requirements, then it does not. It just gets approved administratively. Right. But that's where they have to meet those standards, where they're required to do some kind of stealth or paint matching, material matching, and that kind of stuff. If they're not going with a design along those, then they'd have to request that it go through a special review and be approved that way, and they'd have to show why they can't do that.
Justin, do you have a crystal ball?
I wish.
I do too. So I'm just trying to imagine, as fast as technology is changing, can you tell me what you see how you see our community looking in 5 years or 10 years in regards to how many of these are we going to have, and can you give us a guess, or do you have a?
I can tell you what the upper limit on that would probably be. In one of the webinars I attended, they said that if you take a city the size of Kansas City in their metro area, and you consider how dense these need to be placed, and you consider that you're going to have 4 different providers putting them up, Kansas City is expected to need about 76,000 of these. So obviously Mitchell's not quite the same size as Kansas City metro area.
76.
But I think if the way that we projected it, the per square mile projection came out at like 700 of these antennas. And I think that's probably on the high side, and that's assuming that you'd have all 4 carriers interested in placing them. I don't know that I should speculate, but I would be very surprised if we ever got close to those numbers. Within the next few, Mitchell does have one thing going for it that really helps to facilitate this process, in that we've got fiber infrastructure all over the city. So if they need to place these, it shouldn't be too difficult for them to tap into that fiber network and give them the data speeds that they need. So that's one thing that should really help Mitchell when they're looking to deploy these things. And yes, I did plug that a lot when I was on the phone with Verizon and AT&T. So hopefully they got that message.
But when you hear these presentations, eventually, we might not have 700 in the next 10 years, but eventually you will. They said this is the next technology that will deliver what we're doing now. With the Internet of Things, as you have more and more of those technologies within your house, they have to have that close proximity for them to function correctly.
I know this is a really stupid question, so forgive me, but what does this replace? What have we got that will become obsolete because of this?
This doesn't really replace. It's more of a supplement than a replacement. It offers higher speeds in certain circumstances and less latency. Some of the technologies that they are looking to implement with this is potentially compete with broadband internet with individual receivers for homes and stuff like that. Also, potentially self-driving cars to utilize the network. I don't know how realistic some of those aspirations are for Mitchell, South Dakota.
It lets you get on Facebook a lot quicker, Mrs. Chair.
Wow, I know.
Susan, but that question, the 4G LTE won't go away. It'll still be there, and actually, as this rolls out, it'll probably even get, with more backhaul infrastructure, should even get a little better and faster. But the near field and Internet of Things, the volume of increased traffic that they're predicting, and again, in Mitchell, South Dakota, it might not come to fruition as fast as on the East Coast and the West Coast, but that the amount of data traffic from Internet of Things and going forward and 5G in 2 years will outdo all of the data that's been transmitted since wireless telephones began. So whether you believe the hype or don't believe the hype, it's coming. Just how fast will it come here? And if we don't have this in place, it's kind of putting us behind the 8 ball a little bit.
So let's keep being a smart city. Moving to place ordinance 2018-18 on first reading.
Marty, I like your spirit there, but
Justin, do you need to show us the changes? So
I need
that
to go
I can
back.
Second that and approve and second parties motion with the changes that are not in our packet.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion.
Well, my second is pending
what you see in the rest of it.
the changes.
Yeah, so just to be clear, what I'm going through with you now are changes from when it was initially posted to the agenda over the weekend here, as we've continued to work with the industry on a few more comments and a little bit of tweaking of the language here. So I'll just run through a few sections here. And we'll start on what should be page 4 there, bottom of page 4. It'll be under 994. And so right there, you can kind of see on the left the red lines there. So first one will be under 994A2, and I'm just going to read the new language for you instead of going through what the change is going to be. So the new language there would read, be located on public property and structures if the controlling public entity agrees to the placement. There was some language that was removed there. The next section under B, there was some language change there. Nothing really substantive. So it now reads applications. Sorry, this is going to start to get long, but we need to make sure that we've got our our I's dotted and our T's crossed. So it now reads applications to co-locate SCFs at locations other than those listed in section 9-9-4A may not be approved administratively. However, if an applicant certifies that it is not technically feasible, economically feasible, or places an undue burden to co-locate an SCF at a location designated in section 9-9-4A, the applicant may request a special review of the application as provided under section 9-9-5C2. Such certification shall include a written statement indicating the reasons why said locations are not feasible.
Justin, who makes these?
The language?
No.
Or who makes the...
Who makes the towers, the cells, the...
Oh, who would be the applicants? Or?
No, who makes them? I mean, I'm thinking someone's... I need to go make some investments.
Yeah.
But I'm serious, like, who builds them? Who's making them?
I'm sure there's a number of companies that do it.
And
do you guys do that yet?
No, we don't make them. But I'm playing devil's advocate. And I'm not sure, but you're talking companies like Cisco, Huawei. I'm not sure if Verizon has some subsidiaries that also make them. One of the issues we're looking at is that some of the cells and some of the backhaul items are made by Chinese companies. And there's issues in government relations with that right now. But I'm trying to think of other equipment dealers we deal with, but I'm not sure who makes antennas. But a wireless company would probably contract with somebody to come in and do the installation, and whoever makes the antenna isn't going to come put them up. It's going to be some installation company that comes and puts them up, and that might even request the...
I just need a graphic organizer to see what's at the top and who does what and how it's all filtering down. I mean, that's what I really
Maybe by the time we get a request, our public works department can kind of give that to us as to what it will look like.
We don't have enough lead to draw that.
So I changed my mind about not showing you what was changed. Here you can kind of see some of the language that was taken out and moved. Again, it's not really a substantive change. It's more about tweaking a little bit of language, making it a little bit more clear, and moving things around just so everything runs a little bit more smoothly. There aren't a whole lot of these. This one, I think we just changed the language from may to shall approve. This one, we changed the language a little bit to make the start date of that period a little bit more clear. Here we added some language just to make it clear that their applications can include things like a new or replacement pole or structure. And that's just following off that previous comment. Here was the language that Steve was referring to about that sign permit. We just took the sentence out that referenced the sign permit. They still have to be in compliance with the regulations. They just don't have to get a different permit. This was some language that was suggested later today by a representative from Verizon, just tweaking the language a little bit there, just to make them feel a little bit more comfortable about what they're responsible for. Again, I don't think it really changes the meaning, just language that they would prefer. And same thing here, they wanted a little bit more flexibility on not having to meet the exact requirements of this as long as it substantially complies with it, and whether it does or not comply with that is up to the city to determine. In this section, we just changed some wording. Before it was talking about just a bond. Now we gave them a couple of other options that they can use to meet that requirement for financial assurance. And I believe that was all the changes. So as long as Marty's motion includes.
And I'll second with those changes.
That's all I've got then.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Rice. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to address this? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Item 29, executive session. Motion to enter an executive session according to South Dakota Codified Law 125-2-3, legal.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Rice, second by Mr. Allen. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. There won't be any decisions made after the executive session. No. Next. I will be for a very short time in the morning. From about 8 to 8:30, 9 o'clock. Well, I got to go and pull the radio.
Hi, Dan. Good.
That's why you should have that.
I know. I talked to you about this thing.